Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, Government on the Edge, Protecting and Securing Communications on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today, Susanna Schiller, the acting CIO at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the Commerce Department. Vincent Sertapan, a portfolio manager at the Homeland Security Department's Science and Technology Directorate. Colonel Pete Wilson, the CIO G6 for the Army National Guard. George Battistilli, the Cybersecurity Program Manager for the Army National Guard. And Brian Palma, the President and Chief Operating Officer for BlackBerry. At the very end of this segment, Vincent brought up this idea of commercial solutions for classified. If they're good enough for classified, they sure is good enough for unclassified. And unfortunately, I had to both cut off both Colonel Wilson and Brian. So let me start with Colonel Wilson. What about the commercial solutions for classified, and what does that mean for you guys from not just a security perspective, but a usability and privacy and all the other pieces?
Yeah, for usability, I think we're really trying to incorporate the new technologies, but we have to evolve our risk tolerance levels, and the processes to be able to make better use of the collaboration tools that are available. And I think that's something that we're trying to work through right now.
And when you talk about risk tolerance, is there's different risks, right? Some general has, I'm good to go, let's use it. And poor George here is like, whoa, but sir, how do you as the CIO balance those risks? I mean,
absolutely.
You manage up and manage down.
Yeah, I rely on good folks like George, and we try and take a good look at it to see if it really is a vulnerability. And if it's a vulnerability, then we tell leadership, hey, we can't use this, and this is why. And usually they're very accepting of it. They understand. But if we can mitigate that vulnerability, we can figure out a way in which we can use it, then we do. We try and incorporate it. And it's through commercial technology and innovation that we are often able to bring some of these new tools to the federal government, to the military. It's great.
As we talked about, sometimes it's an iPad, but maybe it doesn't have the camera or the Bluetooth turned on, but they can still get a lot of the functionality as one benefit. Brian, jump in, because the commercial solutions, that's where you guys play.
Yeah.
That's your hot spot, so to speak.
I think in the last year we've really seen an uptick, and Vincent talked about it with the commercial solutions for classified. From folks like Colonel Wilson, CIOs that are interested in really getting to be part of the innovation and use the latest things in the market. So that's been positive for us. We've been in there trying to help solve some of those problems. I think they really range. We talked a lot about voice today, also messaging, right? The other big one for us is we've done a lot of work around mass notification. So being able to notify large groups of employees across different environments, that's a place where the commercial side is leading the way, and those solutions are being consumed within DHS, within DoD. So there's a lot of components to this. I think the next frontier we see coming, I mentioned it earlier, is around smart speakers or home assistants coming into the enterprise. We're seeing that happen over on the commercial sector right now with customers. We're doing a number of POCs. And typically that curve is about 3 to 5 years till it comes over to the public sector. But we're seeing that happen a lot quicker. We're really seeing it happen more, Jason, in about 1 to 3 years.
It's fascinating you see that same curve there, because totally different topic, but I see that with robotics process automation as an example. I know we can spend a whole panel on that, but that's another one where the commercial picked it up, and then all of a sudden the feds picked up much more quickly. Let me go over to Susanna as well, because we talked a lot about classified, commercial for classified. You guys aren't classified for the most part, I imagine, or 99.9% of it. But you still have worries about commercial solutions. Maybe talk about how you guys find, again, the balance of usability versus security.
Sure. So we certainly have, everybody wants to use those smart devices that are attached to their hip 24/7. And we also provide centrally supported mobile devices for our staff. And what we've done is said, if you're connecting to the NIST network, then you need to be using a NIST managed device. We don't allow personally owned devices to connect. Our centrally managed devices do have the appropriate configurations on them. They are patched in a regular way. They are monitored appropriately. And that's the restriction that we've put on things. But at least our folks are able to use the commercial devices.
Now, you brought up the idea that you guys work with scientists. They know their IT sometimes.
They do.
Do they, like generals sometimes, do they understand why you have maybe some certain parameters?
Yes.
Yes, hopefully.
We You know, one of the advantages of being at NIST, where the Information Technology Laboratory is setting these standards, is our whole management chain understands security better than I think your average management chain, and we have great support for cybersecurity at an operational level from the top. As a security culture is something that is embedded in NIST.
And I think that's a great point, because sometimes you fall into this. I've heard from other agencies who deal with scientists, and it's not always as easy. Brian, jump in.
We'd love to help those scientists bring some of those personal devices in. So just let us know. Let us know if we can help.
Well, they all would love to. And one of the other interesting challenges is we have scientists who do research using those devices, where they're actually looking at the characteristics of them. And so we have to allow some flexibility in our policies to accommodate those uses.
And a lot of this, I mean, our discussion today has really been about that usability versus security balance. And that actually comes to a great segue to something that Brian's brought up a couple times, is the smart speaker, the next generation of that. And I want to have that conversation because, Colonel Wilson, you brought up earlier about the Fitbit issue, and you guys have put a policy out to take care of it. But that doesn't mean that the civilian agencies have really thought about it. Brian, maybe start there with what is the big risks about the Google Home and Amazon Alexa and others similar to that maybe people just aren't getting their head around quite yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about those devices and they're on and they're listening and they're very advanced in speech recognition, if they're on in different places, if folks bring those into the office environment, they can have an effect that compromises information. What we've been working with a large multinational insurance company, though, because they want to get the benefit of those voice assistant devices within conference rooms and for meetings and other reasons. And there are ways to design those devices as an endpoint that's protected, that's managed, so you can securely use it. And one of the ways we do that is by turning off some of those features and making sure you understand when is it monitoring, when isn't it, what type of an environment is it in. So early on, innovation in that, but more and more demand, again, from our commercial clients.
And you're thinking that eventually this is going to come to the feds as well. I mean, you see the AI and the machine learning of like robotic automation. I mentioned that, but are you seeing some at least initial questions from feds?
Yeah. So obviously, recently we just made an acquisition of Cylance, right, a leader in artificial intelligence and machine learning. We see those two worlds coming together with voice, and you can imagine how you might use a device here, right, in the studio, right, to be able to be more efficient and to be able to work with that voice assistant. It's a great thing, and people understand that.
There was one thing earlier on that could robots write a story, and we believe they can't. So don't worry.
We got it. Not yet.
Well, not ever. Come on. Vincent, let me bring you into the conversation as well, because as we talk about the smart speakers and we talk about this idea of the security risks, is that something that DHS, whether from S&T perspectives or CISA, whichever hat you're wearing right now, is that starting to bubble up as something you guys need to look at either today or maybe in the near future?
Yeah, so voice in general and the security of that is a concern, especially when you think about law enforcement sensitivity in our missions. But when you think about it on even as a mission enabler, right, using voice to enable the mission, that usually happens through some other endpoint, though. So we have sort of taken it from, I wouldn't say from the ground up, but understanding, knowing what you have, hardware, software, asset management, and then bringing it to that voice aspect. So we'll get there. We're getting there, I'd say that, and both with whether it's in the department or outside. But understanding that the data sensitivities, high, medium, low, classified, following those policies and rules, and making policies and best practices that actually can meet the need. Those are pieces in which we're looking to address.
You brought up also your work with both the CNSS, but also the CIO Council. Is a lot of the CIO Council work, is any of that also starting to kind of bleed into this idea of the Google Home and Alexa, or not quite there yet?
So I think it's more, not as much on voice, more towards like sensor systems, to be honest. So like IoT and others, and how we can use that for smart cities. So you're going to get, like, because everything's through a mobile app, some kind of protocol, and a mobile device back to the enterprise. So I don't think voice, it's I wouldn't say it's overlooked. It's looked at, and as you can see in some tactical environments, it is very much taken care of. On the sort of back office and various use cases, those pieces are being looked at, but it's not necessarily one of our strategic thrusts that I've seen so far.
All right, something to maybe follow up with. I want to take the conversation back maybe to almost the beginning, where I think, George, you brought up the idea of workforce and training and awareness. one of the things you guys at the National Guard have to balance is you have people who come and spend a short amount of time or sometimes a longer amount of time with you and then go back to their private lives, and they kind of have feet in both sides. And in their private lives, they may be able to use whatever they want. But then they have to rethink what they're doing with the National Guard. What's the approach you guys are using for training awareness when it comes to soldiers and civilians?
So I think Colonel Wilson's probably best postured to answer that one.
Well, I think part of the richness, the benefit of the Army National Guard is you have the citizen soldier that's able to during the week work at a corporation and do a job, and then come and also become a member of the service. And that it often, I think in general, sometimes industry is leading in awareness in some of those areas and their training. So some of our best IT professionals in the Army National Guard work in the IT field in big companies in the United States during their week job. So they're very well trained. And even for someone that does something non-IT related, the training that we give, whether it's for someone that works in the military full-time or is part-time, they're still getting that training, and I think it carries over to whatever they do on a daily basis. It's very, very, I'd say, very beneficial to get the richness that you get from being a citizen soldier.
Do you get a sense that a lot of times, because they do IT work in their, if you will, day job, that type of thinking is an easy move into when they get into their National Guard uniform?
I think. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say it's an easy transition, if you will.
Very easy, and I think actually they bring such innovation that they're using in their daily lives into their military training, and the expertise we get is just so unparalleled, because you'll have someone working for a huge IT company coming in and literally showing us the newest ways in which to secure our networks. It's just absolutely great.
Excellent. Susanna, jump in.
So I want to take sort of a different tack on that. You know, in the federal government, certainly in the Department of Commerce, we require at least 1 hour of annual security awareness training for all of our users.
A whole hour.
A whole hour.
Okay, all right.
And, one way to deliver that is those delightful online training tools that you're leafing through PowerPoint slides, and everybody, I'm sure, is enthusiastic about their opportunity to do that every year. We've taken a different tack, one that is not exclusive, but allows people to do something that's much more interesting, and also much more relevant. So for the past 20 years, we've had an annual IT Security Day. And it is an entire day in our auditoriums where we have 3 to 4 different big auditorium speakers talking about current topics in security. And so, of course, those have evolved. In fact, I'm thinking that we're going to have a topic on Alexa and Google Home probably coming up this year on that. And we also have some smaller talks that are on more NIST-specific kinds of things. They might be about new things that we're implementing, new services that we'll be providing that will make their work lives more secure, but also more user-friendly. And we've been doing that for 20 years. Now, of course, if you can't make it to IT Security Day, you still have the opportunity of taking your training in another way. We also focus, of course, on specialized training for people with specialized cybersecurity roles. And those could be your IT security officers, your authorizing officials, your system owners, et cetera. And we also offer ad hoc training if a particular organization wants to have a training that's focused for users. But we're very big on awareness in a way that is interesting and useful. Many of the topics are relevant in their personal lives as well as for their work.
Vincent, jump in.
So I can say, at least from a user perspective, whether it's my Navy Reserve duty or DHS, definitely I do love the PowerPoint partly, but no, seriously, in all seriousness, I will say that I've seen it go from PowerPoint to more interactive, web-based learning, and to see that not only the web-based interactive is actually interesting, but the storyline has changed. Before, when you did cybersecurity training and awareness programs, I didn't even see a mobile device if you go back 3-4 years ago. Now you actually see the mobile paradigm actually being brought in. They steal your device, what you can talk about, where you can talk about sort of data sensitivities. So Actually, it's great. It's a lot longer than an hour for us on a lot of fronts. But definitely, just as a user perspective, I will tell you, it's progressed, and I'm very appreciative of it.
And Brian, you get the last word. So sum us up from a workforce perspective, from an awareness perspective.
Yeah, so I think I'll go back to where you started a little bit, which is, the supply-demand curve is really out of whack when it comes to cybersecurity jobs, as you know, right? Over 2 million person shortage, and that shortage continues to grow. It's not getting better. I think, what we try to do is partner with our customers on the federal side, but all of our customers just don't have enough resources, right, to go after this problem. So I think one of the main charges for all of us in the industry is to find a way to use public policy to do a better job of creating the talent that we need to be able to go out and solve these problems. So that's really where we are, and we get called in a lot of times to help, and I think the more we can do there, the effects that's going to have throughout the industry.
All right, excellent. Well, this has just been a fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So let me thank my guests for today. Susanna Schiller, the Acting Chief Information Officer at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the Commerce Department. Vincent Sertapan, a Portfolio Manager at the Homeland Security Department's Science and Technology Directorate. Colonel Pete Wilson, the CIO G6 for the Army National Guard. George Battistilli, the Cybersecurity Program Manager for the Army National Guard. And Brian Palma, the President and Chief Operating Officer for BlackBerry. Thank you so much for taking the time today. You've been listening to the panel discussion, Government on the Edge, Protecting and Securing Communications on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I've been your host, Jason Miller. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search BlackBerry.
On behalf of BlackBerry, thank you for joining us. A link to the archive session will be sent to you shortly. If you requested a training certificate, you will also receive an email with the download instructions after the webinar. This concludes our discussion. Thank you.